So that's a second part in which I want to talk about. Again, Lenin, Stalin, Putin, roots of the war in Ukraine, communism versus capitalism, and West against East. So I'm going to focus on another topic, on another two topics probably. One more short topic is that we have now so-called Eastern world and supporters of Russia, even in this war. And there are many countries in the world, let's say in Africa, Asia, Latin America, who supported, who were maybe neutral or even supported different time of history in relation to war in Ukraine. And that also includes China and India, so two largest countries by population. And of course would be a question, of course, why would we support Russia if they have like so many so bad negative qualities, if we again look at the previous part of my video. I believe in order to compare this, I believe that in order to analyze this topic, we should compare, right, the effects which Russia caused in those countries in comparison with, for example, the United States and other people from Western world when we appear there. So when we appear, let's say, in some African or Asian country or in Latin America, what are we there for, and what do we bring, and what people remember about them later? So that's, I believe, a very important question. In order to answer this question, I can probably have to look at another topic. What type of Russian citizens or Russian officials would go to poorer parts, to poorer countries of the world, in comparison with, for example, those which Russian officials would go to the Western world, which is generally, again, let's say during 20th century particularly, were way, way wealthier. North America, Europe, for example. And the answer would be, of course, those who have maybe some kind of political connections, maybe some kind of, maybe related to having relatives and so on, we would have access to those richer countries, whereas poor countries would be not a popular choice even to become, let's say, an ambassador, a consulate, to work in all these embassies, consulates, to work in different missions, economical missions, to have like go and establish some cultural, sport-related, industrial, technical, technological cooperation with all these countries. So therefore, in those poorer countries of the world, poorer parts of the world, and that would of course include India in the past, China, we would be having people from Russia who would be more kind of enthusiastic, who were more kind of real believers in communism, rather than having ties, maybe having relatives in government, people who would help them to go to richer Western countries. So therefore, these people from Russia who would go towards those countries, we would bring real help and cooperation to Africa, Asia, Latin America. So this is how we would view people from Russia and the like effects of their appearance. So what happened later, like what really we brought to our country, what were like benefits for our country. Now, if we look at the same question from the viewpoint, okay, now we have Americans or people from the Western world. Well, what we are here for? Well, we would be coming here for, let's say, natural resources, maybe to explore food, to get food from those countries, and the prime interest would be, of course, in money and profits. So therefore, now the question would be, of course, if we think about, again, comparing these people who are looking for money, for profits, versus those kind of Russians who would come with real care about communism, about bringing similar values that we had in Russia, which I already discussed, like in this positive side of Russia, if we try to bring these values to those countries. So the choice is quite clear. that we would care there like Russian people would care about people. Healthcare, education, culture, sport, and there are like thousands of examples where this cooperation resulted in really large advances by those countries in all this area. So, of course, we would choose Russia. So, we would choose Russia, and that's why I believe we believe in communism in Russia would be kind of stronger than belief in capitalism. We looks like greed, because again, Americans like driven by free market, so people would come to make money, so that we would get profits by trading, by extracting natural resources and so on, like having cooperation, but again from a little different, or let's say a very different perspective. So that's why we kind of have this type of affinity, liking of Russia, and so that's I think makes sense on the one side, but on the other side again, like occasionally those people who could be called communism, they can take another part, another facet of this person which we discussed, called Vladimir Ulyanov, Lenin, and use his ideas maybe in relation to suppression of, let's say, some opposition or capitalists or like some other people. So that's therefore there is kind of this type of danger which is hidden maybe within approval of this style of leadership which Russia had in the past, Soviet Union had in the past. So therefore, kind of it's a complex situation, but I saw actually many signs that in different countries we were becoming kind of more aware about this maybe harsh, brutal and criminal part of Lenin, and what type of extreme dangers it could bring to the country. And so therefore the question again very complex, but again going back to the situation, what would we choose in this war? And because support and spiritual support is a huge factor, and that's of course not surprise, because when Vladimir Putin started this war, he certainly anticipated there would be some people who would like it, who would not like it at all, who would be neutral, but he certainly had a clear understanding that would be many countries, probably most countries, let's say in Africa, many countries in Latin America, largest by population, largest countries by population, such as China and India, would be countries who would be still trading with Russia and who would be maybe not supporting but being, let's say, neutral in relation to the war. And that also was a huge factor in terms of that, of course, like having this kind of international not support but neutrality, acknowledgement of this war made him also, of course, more aggressive, more able to start this war. So now I want to maybe discuss a little bit about Vladimir Putin, and here before starting, like I have to say right away, I already mentioned it before, so because since I left Russia in 1994, left Moscow and immigrated to Canada, I haven't been in Russia for all these years, and therefore I know very little about Vladimir Putin, and therefore I could just maybe learn few facts from maybe occasional videos, occasional information on YouTube, and occasional information in public media on the West. And so I learned a couple of things about Vladimir Putin which kind of became interesting for me, because these were situations where Putin mentioned Lenin. And so that of course rose my, that was led to my increased attention to this particular situation. So the first one relates to the case when during one press conference, I think it was many years ago already, there was answers from the audience after Vladimir Putin had some, again, communication with people surrounded by his aides, And then somebody asked, "Oh, what do you think about Lenin? What he did? Like, who was he in terms of like, kind of maybe the old, the current Russia?" And so it was some kind of press conference, and Vladimir Putin said that actually Lenin placed or planted the time bomb under Russia. Why? Because, well, in Soviet constitution, when Soviet Union, we wrote that actually it was a union of free republics. This is what Lenin wanted, to have free republics, meaning that we are free to leave the union. And this is what we did during the collapse of Soviet Union, which took place in early 1990s. So country collapsed into 15 smaller countries. And now, how we can now kind of view this phrase, this word that Putin used, meaning that, okay, Lenin kind of planted the bomb, but what Putin did? Well, Vladimir Putin then looks like a builder who got this huge problem from Lenin, like Lenin kind of installed the bomb, time bomb, the bomb exploded, and now Vladimir Putin now is to deal with consequences. So that's this type of association which is created by this phrase. Now, there is one more association which I'm going to provide later, but if you remember the previous part of my video, you probably guess that there is kind of another association with planting the bomb. Now, there is another case where Vladimir Putin mentioned Lenin's name, and that relates to the what to do with Lenin's body, with mausoleum. And Vladimir Putin suggested we should not touch Lenin's body, because we were discussing should Russia remove Lenin and the mausoleum from the Kremlin. He mentioned that Vladimir Putin mentioned there would be noise from communism and the left, so that we don't want this noise, and that's why we should not touch Lenin's body. It was interesting phrasing here again, because he did not like to move the body, to kind of to display the body. We should not touch Lenin's body. That was a phrase, interesting phrase, because it also creates some association. Which type of association is created? Well, it's kind of, there are two here. It's interesting because there are two kind of cases where Vladimir Putin used phrases which I believe kind of have specifically tricky part here, which relates to his probably most likely KGB training, because with KGB people, we know how to manipulate perception and psychology of people. And I believe that these were well thought out expressions, probably crafted by Vladimir Putin team members, agents from FSB and maybe from past KGB. So therefore, we can here ask the question, okay, why he choose these phrases? Well, in first case, there is another association with his brother, which we discussed, who planted the bomb. I mean Lenin's brother who planted the bomb. And the association is that, okay, why? Because average Russian citizen hearing this phrase that Lenin planted the bomb would think about these words of Vladimir Putin. There is like, it looks like there is some historical wisdom in these words of Vladimir Putin, of our president. That what average Russian would think. And then average Russian would think, planted the bomb. Like, kind of, there is some historical wisdom in that, yeah. Probably Vladimir Putin should be a very wise man. There is like some deep connections sit there. Probably, you know, most people probably don't remember that actually it was his brother who planted the bomb, but you see Vladimir Putin uses this kind of association here to create kind of some psychological depth. In real life, I believe it would be more correct to say that, okay, Lenin did a lot of positive things, but in reality he did not plant or place the time bombs. What he did, he kind of misplaced and misplaced, moved, installed corpses of innocent people while framing other people, let's say blaming extremists for murders of the Romanovs family and other murders which was present again in 17, 18 later years. So you see here, okay, we have avoidance of this event. Now let us look at the second phrase where he told that we should not touch the body. Okay, interesting kind of verbal expression that Vladimir Putin used, because you see, when we visit such places, like such historical places, the mausoleums, tombs, no, commonly you can see a sign actually, do not touch, do not touch. Hence, therefore, and Vladimir Putin here uses the same exact word, like do not touch a body. And I believe it works like a misdirection trick, because in mausoleums, tombs, and all these kind of historical places, these are authorities, people who guard, who was like supported to take care about preservation of the place, and that's why we have this sign: don't touch with your arms, don't touch this, don't touch this. That's okay, that makes sense. But here Vladimir Putin used this thing is as if to prove that the murder of children should remain to be a symbol of the country. So he uses this authoritarian position, association of this sign, do not touch, in order to use it for himself, so that this symbol remains on the red square across the St. Basil Cathedral. And like if you, I don't know if you've been on Red Square, in the one corner there is Mausoleum of Lenin, and on the opposite side there is this Orthodox symbol of Orthodox Russia. So it's kind of look for me like a bit tricky. Like he uses kind of this type of techniques, which maybe in a way reminds how Lenin was presenting his actions to his people. Now we can back up maybe from this phrase, do not touch, we should not touch the body of the Lenin, and ask like, okay, why he may need the body of Vladimir Lenin as a symbol of Russia to have, because I already mentioned in the previous part that in 2008 the Supreme Court of Russia rehabilitated Nicholas II and his family, basically declaring that they were innocent people, and that means that people who murdered them were criminals, were like people who did something totally out of normal, out of law. Let us back up and have another kind of situation. Imagine the following situation. Imagine like some secret agents, some secret service, and now they want to subvert US Congress, like American US Congress or Senate, and to make them more aggressive or more violent. How they could do that? What would be like the steps which would these secret agents would do in order to make not Supreme Court, US Congress or Senate more kind of submissive, more moved in the direction of aggression and violence? Well, I believe probably like after thinking, secret agents decide, oh, we need somehow to install a bust, like kind of a face and small monument of United States. Well, we can choose probably like somebody aggressive, somebody like some famous criminal, Al Capone. Okay, let us. So the secretaries, oh, we need to install like a bust of Al Capone, you know, like kind of the head of Al Capone on the side, you know, like these congressmen or members of Senate, you know, go for the like meetings, or the like proceedings, and so we see the the Al Capone's bust right there. And not only that, these agents, like, well, I believe they would be that smart, I believe, for sure, like all around the world these days, and in the Western world as well. We need to also install scaffolding, you know, like those metal bars, so that when members of Congress or Senate pass near Al Capone bust, And we need to install scaffolding at such a height so that the shortest member of Senate or Congress need to bend their heads passing near the Al Capone bust. So you can imagine like with like members of like, we have now some reconstruction going on, you know, in the White House or somewhere else, and all these people line up and we go, and there is a bust of Al Capone, like kind of just maybe a sign like a temporary, like temporal removal, whatever, and then we go and bend their heads because of this scaffolding, you know, members, and the bust of Al Capone. Like, so if we enter these buildings with members of Senate, again, or Congress, they can start like making some crazy decisions, you know, and KGB agents and secret agents in the Western world, probably around the world now as well, we know this thing, this trick like really, really well. Although ordinary people, they don't learn these things. They are not learned in school, like, and public media, they kind of not kind of eager to learn, to teach the population about this type of things. So I can imagine, like, let's say, we can imagine the same thing, let's say, in Germany, let's say, like some Bundestag or some other, like, members of German government, we are going to meet, German, like, parliament. How we could subvert this government, again, to make them more aggressive, more submissive, more violent? Well, I believe secret agents would think and say, oh, now we probably should install a small bust, kind of a symbol, a representation of some aggression, violence, of, well, Hitler probably it would be like too extreme, but let's say Bormann or Goebbels, you know, those like from the Nazi top and closest like allies, friends of Hitler. And maybe to also install like some scaffolding to do something that we would like go. Then we had lawmakers will start to do like crazy things. So that's why, you know, he get like such a unanimous agreement in Russian Duma. I think it was in Russian Duma who like approved the war in Ukraine. So again, both these tricks are from the most common modern secret agents tricks, or tricks used by national security agencies also in the West, and it can be called like misdirection of attention to create confusion, to create kind of to make people do things which they otherwise would not do. Now we can also think about, again, I do not know about specific persecutions, like rumors, maybe they were true, about his suppression of opposition. No, that he maybe like even imprisoned some people for like virtually nothing, or maybe some KGB like or secret agents with whom of course he has very close ties. Vladimir Putin, I mean, they probably could participate in these events with maybe approval or with kind of initiation done by Vladimir Putin. Hard to tell. But the question which we can ask here, what Putin would do if, let's say Vladimir Lenin now is in opposition. Imagine that again we have now kind of the same what we have in Russia, but Vladimir Putin among other parties has Lenin's party. So Lenin is alive with Sverdlov, Dzerzhinsky, and we already, let's say, we already organized these murders of Romanov's family, and now we became in opposition to Vladimir Putin. So Vladimir Putin, again, on the one hand, he says, he like expresses his respect to Vladimir Lenin, saying, "Oh no, his body like nobody should touch his body," like, kind of giving the idea that Lenin still represents the nature, the kind of the symbol of Russia, and. So, what would Vladimir Putin do if Lenin now is in opposition, together with his mates, in opposition to Vladimir Putin? Well, since Lenin was a murderer of children, he was leader of the criminal group which is and it was multiple murders. Like these are all like very aggravating factors. Murdering innocent children, murdering with arms, no weapons, and so certainly it could be capital punishment, but probably Lenin would be spending at least like to the rest of his life in a prison without parole, and together with Sverdlov, Dzerzhinsky, Stalin, and all the team, I think it is quite clear what Vladimir Putin would do with them right now. So at the same time, he like keeps Lenin's body in mausoleum, saying that don't touch it. And here maybe some thinking about this situation, kind of meditating about this situation. I thought we probably can make like a caricature, in which you can imagine there are like coffin of Vladimir Lenin, and it's attached on ropes, okay? And so Vladimir Lenin is pushing this coffin, and this coffin like flies among the members of Russian government, of Russian Duma, like Russian parliament, and we were like backing up, because the coffin is flying, and on this coffin it is written, "Don't touch the Putin, Vladimir Putin." So you can imagine this picture. So that's looks like that's how leadership now of Russia is practiced by Vladimir Putin. It's again my impression, because I don't know many other details. There could be many examples. I live in I'm Canadian for again 25 years and haven't been in Russia since 1994. But these kind of examples create like a picture, so that it's a complex situation what we have in Russia right now, and very difficult to predict. But again, what I discussed a lot during this video, let's say 2 or 3 times already, that the West and its propaganda machine, by using these stereotype phrases, does not create actually reasonable dialogue, cooperation, and desire to change. It actually generates a lot of hostility with Russia. And that's why kind of this war and Ukraine, I don't know again like all these details. I know even less about Ukraine, about politics, which were common for leaders of Ukraine during last, let's say, 10-20 years. But we can certainly say that this type of viewpoint, this type of attitude towards Russia, towards communism in general, is not something which should promote cooperation. So again, that can provide an analogy with criminal. When all people say and think, oh, that's again this bastard criminal, neighbors and so on, and oh, that's bastard criminal, that's bastard. Well, people who work, let's say, in social services, other organizations, we would say, well, that's criminal, but he has certain, skills. He's handyman, and this, he was again like, let's say, like, really cared about his children, which many criminals do. So, and maybe did many others, certain things which were influenced the rest of the world in a positive way. So when this is not done, of course, that's something which is again not certainly a positive factor to disclose. To talk about prevention of this war and maybe creation of peace right now. So now. A small part here, what I want to mention about KGB Leninist. I made a video about anti-health and anti-Buteyko conspiracy by 2 layers of secret agents, in which I discuss a person who organized, as I believe, by providing tens of cases related to my life, that somebody organized massacres, murders, shootings, plane crashes, and other mass killings just due to activities of some people, and I has been one of these people, as I realized, for more than 2 decades after I exposed this KGB method technique to Western authorities, telling them that actually KGB was using brainwashing, mind control, so that people can commit all type of crazy things later, like with total mind control I'm talking about. So they can do anything, including killing their relatives, killing themselves. And that's what we did many times since then. And virtually most, I believe, more than 90% of, let's say, shootings in the United States and other explosions, plane crashes, and other kind of events with mass killings of people, these were activities which were kind of done in order to, again, to frame people, to frame somebody else, to create an illusion that there is actually some appearance of this person in this area, okay, made this crime, to made these deaths to take place. And that happened with me many times, because once I exposed them, they quickly, of course, learned, because I wrote again about 50 letters to different consulates, embassies, about dangers of this KGB method, because I wrote directly that actually people can take guns, kill others, kill themselves, and it would be extremely hard to find who organized that. And these days we have a lot of this type of killings. Saying we could not find the motive now. What was the causes? Like why this person all of a sudden killed like so many people? Killed often his, most likely it's like male, killed members of the family, killed himself. So many cases repeated again. People take planes, they kill the whole plane of passengers, kill themselves. Happens already many times. People take some weapons, some missiles, kill and shoot them into passenger planes. That already took place not once. So all type of explosions, Beirut explosion, and many others, where again like hundreds, sometimes more than thousands of people died. And so what happens here is that I believe that here we have the same mentality where somebody else trying to frame another person. Like I was one of them, and I found there several other people, and several people who represent other health therapies, health movements, who were also framed in this way, so that when we do certain things, there is a crime related to these things. Let's say like whatever, like we can, let's say, visit church, there is like shooting in the church, maybe across the wall sometimes, a very different place, but secret agents, we know, oh guys, you see he visited a church and that's why this shooting take place. And then it's again, so then when there are tens, could be more than hundreds of places, could be also some local murders take place, where there are some kind of hints, kind of some associations, which kind of make another person looks like it's his activities or her activities trigger it with deaths later. And then secret agent starts to believe that actually if we prevent now this person from doing such type of things, there would be fewer crimes, fewer victims. So then we start to focus on these I call them targeted people like me. I'm like a target person. So I'm targeted individual, meaning that somebody else organizes crimes attached to my traveling, attached to my all type of things. I can take, let's say, cash from a bank or go shopping in some like supermarket, some shopping mall, and later there is a bank explosion, or like some many people killed in some shopping mall, and so on and so forth. Like I have one video in which tens of examples are described, where literally like 1, 2, 3 days later, in the past it was a week later, such events will like take place, and you can look at the details of the event, and you can see like how much connection exists. Like there are so many details. We select victims, we select the way how the murder is done, where it is done, and so on, so that to create this kind of, again, this misdirection trick, the illusion to form, to control the psychology, the mentality of people. So I believe this KGB Leninist, as I call it, the person who organizes these crimes around the world, because he's a real Leninist, because why? He's doing basically the same what Lenin did 100 years ago. He has been murdering children already for many years, organizing all these shooting massacres in schools, and killing children in other situations, especially during recent years. You can see how many children are involved in. Particularly, he started to order his zombies or his robots, the brainwashed people, to particularly murder children as well. So the children are among those who are killed. That's one part of his behavior, and he's also again like person who like trying to frame other people. So he's doing the same as Lenin did 100 years ago, murdering children and framing other people. So that's kind of another, I can probably make 2 more videos with tens or more cases where similar kind of coincidental shooting of normal events, of normal mass killings took place, where people like all of a sudden, like you look later, like what is going on? What would be sense of this strange murder when the person is caught, or the whole gang like murder somebody? Like many this very weird, like in Mexico, we kill like 3 cars with lawmakers, you know, with policemen, like crazy. And later, of course, we caught all these gang members, like because we kill like basically we had very heavy machine guns, or there was in some Georgian parliament, like the speaker and leading parliament members were killed many years ago, or in the Nepal royal monarchy, royal family, where the member of this royal family killed like virtually all members of his family and killed himself. So there are many crimes like this where these events, I believe, were organized. They look like nonsense events, like why the person would do that. But we would have sense if you start thinking, okay, these people that actually looks like this somebody, the person who is like just trying to undermine the world, but he using the same method of killing children and framing other people. So these the same techniques which kind of originated and kind of became common part of Soviet Union. And that was Vladimir Lenin as well.